So let's get into some of the details that we need to focus on building test cases. Um, when we talk about testing, functional testing is really just the icing on the cake. It's the most important thing because if you have crappy ice cream icing that looks bad, nobody wants to eat your cake. But it's not all of what testing is. It's what the user wants. It's what's going to get us acceptable and out the door for the most part. But it doesn't make up all the things that will have software be unusable. So I don't know if you've ever heard the story of WordPerfect. For those of you who are younger, you may not have heard of software at all, or you may not realize that WordPerfect used to be the #1 word processing software by everybody. It wasn't Microsoft Word. There was no Microsoft Office at the time. It was WordPerfect. And WordPerfect had a release. Really popular software. It was great stuff. And it worked fine, but there was some bugs inside of it that was causing users some issues. So for what it did, the functional side of it, it allows you to type documents and format documents, make sure it happens. But there was some stuff around some of the edge stuff, saving things and losing things and stuff like that, that not only caused WordPerfect to lose its market share and Microsoft Word to become the de facto that most people use in offices at that point. It was so bad, it actually brought down the phone grid around Utah because there was so many calls in to try and get support for that. So their software was so bad they brought down somebody else's software, the phone company's software. This goes back to I think the late 80s, early 90s. To that software. So functional things, performance things, error things, all those things need to be validated just as equally. We have to consider past functionality as well. Things that used to be working just fine, things that, the details that were just fine before, and maybe, we changed something internally and we need to know whether we need to test it or not. So we kind of move past the functional black box world, and we have to get into understanding the details of the system and understanding, okay, what used to work and what still should work, and then how do I validate that those things work as well. Now, the important thing is, it doesn't matter what cycle this stuff happens in. As you're going through and you're describing these testing phases and talking about white box and black box, it doesn't make sense that every single unit test ever is always white box testing, and every single integration testing is always white box testing, and no functional testing is ever white box testing. It's only black box testing, and user acceptance never cares about the details of the system. They only care about the functionality. This stuff can happen anywhere. One of the projects I used to work on, the 767-400, we built the first LCD screens and the first Ethernet that went into the sky. We actually didn't write too many unit tests because our requirements were so detailed. We had 27,000 individual requirements for just the displays alone, that we actually had a group of testers, contract testers, that came in and automated tests on all this stuff, which meant as developers, we could just do whatever we wanted to write good code, and we would let them deal with not only the black box testing, but the white box testing. They had to, as part of FAA certification, ensure that every single line of code that went onto that airplane was executed at some point. So if that's happening as part of your functional, your high quality, your user acceptance testing, why bother redoing it again at the unit level testing? I mean, unit testing is there as mostly to make sure we don't waste too much time in other testing. We want to have some decent quality inside of there. But if I'm doing that level of testing everywhere, why do it over again and slow down the delay of the software getting out there? So it's kind of like like when you get to the end of the season, like the Super Bowl sometimes in football, and they put a brand new turf down that nobody is allowed to touch, walk on, play on, or whatever. That brand new grass, they're so worried about it. And then you get to that game, that big game, playoff game, bowl game, whatever, and you realize the grass is junk. It's slick, it's tearing up, it's just not fit to play on. Because you never had anybody run that before. So sometimes you can do that with any level of testing, your big set of functional tests. If you don't get some real code inside of there tested out, you can realize that test suite isn't very good. And so sometimes it's not all that bad to test software that isn't perfect. I had a boss one time who his goal for our team was to have 0 defects coming out of development all the time. And I pushed back against that. Like, why? I mean, yeah, we could try that. We could try and do for zero defects, but do you want me to delay my release to testing for another 2 weeks to make sure I don't have any tests that show up? I mean, it doesn't make any tests that fail. It doesn't make any sense. Why not they're sitting around waiting for us anyway. Their tests are ready to go. Why not give them the code? Let them go check it out and see, see if it makes sense, see if it works. So that's part of what we're going to consider in some of the testing cycle, and how we're going to get to the details of tests.